Alrighty. I don't know if it's gonna be any good or not. Hey, we're gonna try her out though. Give me some. I need to work on stretching my knees and stuff out. For meditating, make it a little easier. So we'll just sit like this till it hurts too bad. Change up the scenery a little bit. Y'all can see my artwork there on the floor, and don't pay no attention to. I don't even know what all behind me. Hey, there's a drawing that somebody gave me. Very creative. Takes a piece of paper and folds it into 3 parts, and then one person draws like the head from the neck up, and then another person draws the midsection, and then another person draws the legs. And actually, that one's divided in 4 parts, I believe. Yeah, the head, the midsection, the legs, and then the feet. So, I liked it. It was something her and her kids done, and she gave it to me. So we left off. The last thing we left off with was encased in this tight net of ego and self-grasping. They are tossed around aimlessly by the currents of fluctuating experiences of suffering and pain. This is what samsaric life is like. So, your happiness, your state of emotional being is dependent upon the experiences around you. And because of that, it's fluctuating. You get tossed around, up and down, all over the place, left and right. You know, you can be happy one minute and depressed or something the next. And in the beginning, it's dependent on experiences outside of you. But then as you go through all this process and stuff, it begins to, you realize that is connected to the experiences inside of you. So your thoughts and emotions, as I talked about before, you have to be aware of your thoughts and watch your thoughts, because if you don't, they can lead you into bad places. You know, have bad experiences. So, anyways, that was where I left off. I guess we'll continue on here. 3 types of suffering is the next paragraph, or next, yeah. How many chapters in here? It's going to take a long time to get through this book, I guess. That's all right. So now the question is, what is dukkha? What is suffering? Dukkha sounds like going to taking a dump or something to me. Yeah, dukkha. What is suffering? Buddhism describes 3 levels or types of suffering. The first is called the suffering of suffering. The second, the suffering of change. And the third is the suffering of conditioning. So I've experienced at least the first 2. I'm not sure the second. Yeah, and probably the third one there too, conditioning. I think we've all experienced that in this country. We've all been conditioned to believe certain things and live certain ways. When we talk about the first type, the suffering of suffering, we are talking in very conventional terms of experiences which we would all identify as suffering. So physical pain and stuff, breaking an arm or something is that. These are experiences. These experiences are painful. In Buddhism, there are 4 main experiences of this type of suffering, which are considered to be fundamental to life in samsara. The suffering of birth, sickness, aging, and death. That's a pretty common sentence there, huh? These are lower physical sufferings, okay, of this physical world. The significance of recognizing these states as forms of suffering, and the importance of this recognition as a catalyst of the spiritual quest is very strongly demonstrated in the Buddha's own life story. According to the story, when he was the young prince, Siddhartha, the Buddha is said to have caught sight of a sick person, an old person, and a dead person being carried away. The impact of seeing this suffering apparently led him to the realization that so long as he was not free of the infinite process of birth, he would always be subject to these other three sufferings. Later, the sight of a spiritual aspirant is supposed to have made the Buddha fully aware that there is a possibility of freedom from this cycle of suffering. So that directly correlates with Christ. Apparently, Christ found the same thing. He said, I am the way and the truth and the light. You come to Christ and you don't have to worry about death. It's everlasting life, spiritual life, or eternal life. So in Buddhism, there is an understanding that so long as we are subject to the process of rebirth, all other forms of suffering are natural consequences of that initial starting point. Okay? So being physically born, you are guaranteed to experience some type of illness or sickness, even if death itself. So even if you lived your whole life and never got the cold or something, death itself is a sickness. It's an illness. You become ill and you die. Okay. Of something. So, and that's the cycle that we go through. Now, spiritually, I had my personal enlightenment, my awakening into God, and then I began. I entered into this cycle of spiritual rebirth and death. Okay, so that is what I am still currently trying to break free from. I don't know. I don't know. To break free from physical death, you have to accept it as reality and quit being afraid of it. I think spiritual death is probably the same way. I think all life is probably the same way, no matter what level you're on. I would pretty well say it's mostly about accepting it completely, fully accepting it. And then when you can accept things, the pain will dissipate. And I'm trying to open up my vocabulary and stuff here. Open up lots of stuff. Open myself up, my mind, my body, stretching my muscles and everything, my emotions. So, but anyways, it will dissipate. What I don't forget what the hell I said there. What dissipates? Oh, the pain and suffering. Okay, it becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. So the more you open yourself up, the less painful it is. Okay, the more you can accept in life. And my first awakening was kind of like being born into God. And then I lived, when I first experienced it, I had a long lifespan, a long connection with God, with life and love inside of myself. And then I died. And when I died, that is when just devastation hit me. Spiritual internal suffering, okay? And my heart and my mind just plumb went to shit. And I mean, I remember when I seen my ex with another guy for 2 weeks after that. Like, for a week, every single day, I was up working on the mountain, and it would just, the damn pressure, the suffering, the pain would build up inside of me. It would just hit me. And I don't know, there was nothing I could do. I would literally just pretty much have to stop what I was doing, get on my knees, and cry until I got it out of me, until I got through it, okay? And that went on every single day for a week, nearly 2 weeks. But then as time went on, it kind of lessened and lessened. Okay, I began to accept things. And there's still things that I struggle with accepting from back then. For the most part, I have learned to accept nearly all of it, but there's still some small things. And I say small, these small things can be very big at times. But compared to what it all used to be, it's very small. And I have worked through most of it. And in doing that, that is helping me to avoid the death, the spiritual death, to end that cycle of rebirth and death, life and death, life and death, okay? There's been so many damn times I've felt, I enter into the light or reconnect with God. I have life and love and energy and happiness in me, and then it dies off. This has happened again and again and again, okay? So for all you women out there who experienced miscarriages and all that stuff, and it hurts every time. It's like you have life, literally have life inside of you, and then it dies off. Okay, I've experienced that in a spiritual sense many times over, and I can't say it. It never gets any better. It's never easy. But you learn to accept it, I guess. You learn to accept it, okay? Because there's nothing you can do about it. Once it dies, it's dead. Well, what you do about it is you learn from it, and you learn to take care of the life inside of you. You learn to nurture it, and you have to develop yourself as a person. Me, I had to develop a feminine side, get in touch with my feminine side, and have a healthy feminine nature in myself in order to nurture my own spiritual life. My thoughts, my ideas, my desires and stuff, and just everything. I've had to learn to be forgiving with myself. I've had to learn to be compassionate and soft and gentle at times. But I'll also still have to I have to carry that masculine side with me as well, where there are times where I have to discipline myself. I have to be hard on myself. Setting like this, it's getting easier and easier, but when you do things like this, you push yourself to the limits and you want to break outside those limits. You have to discipline yourself. You have to kind of put yourself through a little bit of pain and suffering. It's a teaching. It's a teaching method, a disciplinary teaching, okay? So, you got to purposely put yourself in uncomfortable positions, I guess you'd say. And that's okay. Just because you're in an uncomfortable position doesn't mean that you have to suffer mentally or spiritually, That is the whole goal, is to break away from that unnecessary suffering. Okay? You can struggle without suffering. That's hard to explain and understand, but it can be done. I'll show you a picture here. Yeah. Oh boy, that's kind of hard. Alright. That's a monk prostrating in the courtyard of the Jokang Temple, Lhasa, Tibet. Prostrating, I looked that up. It means something to do with worshiping. You humble yourself, you bring yourself down, and you're very humble, and you're giving thanks for worshiping, or something along those lines. I can't remember the exact definition, and my dictionaries are over there. So that's the second time it was in here. If it comes up again, we'll look it up, or y'all can look it up. Whoops. So the second level of suffering, the suffering of change, refers to experiences we ordinarily identify as pleasurable. However, in reality, as long as we are in an unenlightened state, all our joyful experiences are tainted and ultimately bring suffering. So your pleasures, when you're unenlightened, you are unconscious, unaware. Your pleasures are actually addictions, okay? And the reason I say this is because all of our joyful experiences are tainted and ultimately bring suffering. So alcohol is a pleasure while you're drinking and everything. If you drink too much, or if you're in this unenlightened state, um, after the alcohol wears off, you get a headache or you have a hangover or something. It has negative effects on you. And not just alcohol and drugs. Watching TV, meditation, anything at all can be a addiction, a distraction from yourself. It says it brings suffering. Me, it's kind of, I don't think it brings suffering. I don't. Maybe it does. Maybe that's the karma, the dharma, and the karma that they're talking about. But for me, another way that I understand it is that if you're addicted, you're already suffering on the inside. So it's like when the drug or the alcohol or the addiction or whatever it is, when the pleasure wears off, you return back into that state of suffering. That it's already there. Okay? If the suffering wasn't there, you wouldn't be chasing after these temporary pleasures in the first place. When somebody's healthy and wholesome, they don't do things that hurt them. But I guess when you're ignorant, if you do something you don't know it's going to hurt you, then it leads you into suffering. So it depends on how you want to look at it, where you're coming from, I suppose you could say. There's different ways of seeing this. If you're already addicted, then your pleasures, they don't bring suffering. They will temporarily pull you out of the suffering, but as soon as the pleasure wears off, you fall back into it. If you're wholesome and healthy, and then you choose make a bad choice or something, you choose some pleasure that's going to lead to suffering, then that's what this is talking about. It will bring the suffering to you. So you have to be careful what you do in life. Why does Buddhism claim that experiences which are apparently pleasurable are ultimately states of suffering? The point is that we perceive them as states of pleasure or joy only because, in comparison to the painful experiences, they appear as a form of relief. Okay? So addiction, it's a relief from your suffering. They appear that way. That's an illusion. The pleasurable status is only relative. Okay? If they were truly joyful states in themselves, so only the pleasurable status is only relative. So if you remember the picture I drew before of the ultimate truth and the relative truth, what was it? Conventional and relative truths. So the ultimate truth is the circle. You can't see it, but there's just one circle right here. Well, yeah, I guess you can kind of see it there. All right. That was what I originally started with, and that's all it was. Okay. You could say that is an ultimate truth. Okay, that's a wholesome circle. Okay, and then from that circle, that stayed that way for a long, long time. Or maybe that's one way of putting it. Another way would just wonder what the best way of explaining it for y'all is. Okay, so let me take that back. The ultimate truth was, you could say nothingness, emptiness. Okay. Or this floor. There was no artwork here. There's nothing. Just white, plain floor. Okay. So that's the ultimate truth. But then from that, I got an idea. An idea come from me. And I took that idea out of me and I put it on the floor. Okay. Originally, my idea was to take a bucket of water and center it in my floor, center it on my light up here. So I looked at the reflection, walked all around it, and made sure it was centered with the light, which is pretty well the center of my room. Okay, and then that bucket of water was kind of like life water. I took care of it for a while, just something went through there. But I decided to draw a circle around it. so that I knew where the center of my floor was, and I put it back there. So occasionally I would put it there. I danced around it and done all kinds of my own weird stuff there. And eventually that moved on, got rid of the water, moved on from that, and then I had a circle left in my floor, okay? So then from that circle, it took a long time, a month or two, or how, I don't remember how long it was there, probably, maybe longer than that, maybe at least 2 months, maybe 3 or 4, I don't remember. I finally come up with the idea of putting these squares in. So a big square and then a little square at 90 degrees on the inside of the big square. Yep. Oh boy. I don't know how well y'all can see this. I'm turning it all around. So you can see the square is there. And then I need to get better at holding my camera and everything. I need to get better at a lot of things. Alright, and then from the squares, took me a long time. Well, actually, I can't say a long time. It took a week or two, maybe a few weeks. I don't know. Some time went by. And then I had a candle where I decided to draw the other circles. Okay, so draw the other circles. So the ultimate truth is just my floor. You call these things here relative truths. Okay? They grew up out of it. Where was I at here? I think I lost my page. It done flipped all around on me, I think. No, it didn't. If they were truly joyful states themselves, indulge in the case we know likewise the more we engage. I lost my place. Why does Buddhism claim that experiences which are apparently pleasurable are ultimately... Okay. Their pleasurable status is only relative. Okay. If they were truly joyful states in themselves, then just as painful experiences increase, the more we indulge in the cause that led to pain, likewise, the more we engage in the cause that give rise to pleasurable experience. Our pleasure or joy should intensify, but this is not the case. So the picture I drew before where I had the circle and then I had a little weird thing coming up out of it. That's kind of like the earth, okay? So the earth and the sun and water, these three elements allow for life to grow and develop. All right, just like the floor allowed for this to grow and develop from it. Okay, but ultimately, the ultimate truth is that all of these things that we enjoy that are pleasurable to us, they are also going to cause us pain and suffering. Because they're going to die off. Everything in existence is going to die off. Life itself is going to die off in the end. Okay? And that is why I guess for Buddhism, the monks, they don't have sex. They don't, as far as I know, they don't actually create and produce children. They don't, release life, physical life into this world. They are purely spiritual beings. And that's it. They're trying to end the painful cycle of physical birth and rebirth, or death. So, rebirth and death. Or maybe they're not trying to put an end to it, but they themselves have removed themselves from it. Okay? I think it'll pretty well go on forever until the end of time, till everything dies off. I don't know. I think maybe millions of years from now, the earth will decay and fall apart and die. Probably. Everything else dies. Everything that's alive has a death at some point or another. So, but for me and us, for the time being, we are here. We are here in this physical world. I see no reason not to enjoy it, to enjoy the pleasures. It says, and that's why I like Christianity, the view on Christianity and Christ. It says in Revelations, all things are here for our pleasures. So really and truly, I think it's just a matter of accepting everything. Not avoiding it, but accepting it. You have to accept death is a reality, okay? And it's okay. That allows for new life to be born. That allows for another pleasure to come along. So you have to accept, and when you accept it, it's not quite as painful, especially when you understand that we all return back into God. The everlasting, the spirit of life, the energy of life. Just like a tree dying in the forest, it decays and its nutrients return back into the soil and new life grows from it. So did the tree really die? The physical form of the tree died, but the spirit of the tree, the nutrients and everything, was reborn back into another life. And that's all that ever really happens. So physical death is kind of just like an illusion. Even for our bodies and stuff, it is the same way. Now, that stuff gets more and more complex. This is especially when you're trying to bring two religions together. These are just two religions. If you look back at the pharaohs and what we do, we preserve bodies and stuff now. We put them in caskets and graves, and so they don't decay. Some of them don't decay and go back into the earth. The pharaohs done that, and they believed, I guess probably same thing Christ believed. What happened to Christ? He physically died, but then his spirit come back into his body, and his body arose, and I don't know what happened to him. Nobody really knows. Went off into heaven, right? So I guess the pharaohs believed the same thing. Maybe one day their spirits would return in their bodies, so they wanted to preserve their bodies. Who knows? Maybe. They obviously knew a lot of stuff that we didn't. They built the pyramids, and we don't understand them. That's godly beings. So, keep on going. I don't know what the hell's up. This damn rain has got me like, I don't know, I was in a bad mood last night. It's still there a little bit. So that's me. My happiness and pleasures and stuff are still connected and dependent upon physical things outside of me for some reason. Or they're connected there for some reason. I don't know. I'm trying to break free from that suffering. Or accept it. Accept it, I guess. So. On an everyday level, for example, when you have good food, nice clothes, attractive jewelry, and so on, for a short time you feel really marvelous. Not only do you enjoy a feeling of satisfaction, but when you show your things to others, they share in it too. But then one day passes, 1 week passes, 1 month passes, and the very same object that once gave you such pleasure might simply cause you frustration. That is the nature of things. They change. The same also applies to fame. At the beginning, you might think to yourself, oh, I'm so happy. Now I have a good name. I'm famous. But after some time, it could be that all you feel is frustration and dissatisfaction. So I can say I experienced that as well, the fame. The great pleasure of connecting to God. When I connected to God, my enlightenment, I was on Facebook and media, and I had lots and lots of people were listening to me and following me, and I got lots of likes. At the time, I don't know, I cared about all of those likes and all that stuff, but at the same time I didn't. I cared about it because I believed in what I was doing. I believed I was leading people and leading the world into a better place. I loved myself. I loved everybody else, but I loved myself tremendously. But then I died. And since I died, I have, I don't know, a lot of that stuff was confusing. I've had a different change. I've had changes. A change of the way that I view that experience now. Because before then, I was in the experience. Now I died and I was reborn kind of on a bigger scale. is in fact I'm able to look back and observe the experience differently. You know, especially I saw my own suffering. I died, so I felt and experienced all my own suffering and everything. The suffering of the world is how I've put it many times. I experienced the suffering of the world, of life itself, the grand big life. The suffering of life is death. You know, and I died. So I was plumb filled with life and light and love and everything and happiness and bliss. And then I was plumb filled with chaos and disaster and suffering, just suffering, pain and suffering on the inside. Hey. And now the challenge is accepting that. That's the way it is. If you want to live, enjoy life, you have to accept the suffering that's going to come with it as well. So I would say coming to a middle ground, coming to a level, place of stability. Okay? And if I ever choose to, I can choose. I have the choice. We all have the choice. If you want to enjoy the high of pleasure, you got to be willing to accept the lows of suffering and pain. So what do? You practice this, you work this, you work it and you work it and you work it. Okay? So instead of coming to a flat middle place right here where you experience no pleasure or no suffering, if you continuously keep working this up and down, stretching yourself in and out, it's just like stretching your muscles. I keep wanting to get sexual here. For women, just like having sex, okay? There's a lot of women nowadays, so our country has become very sexual, especially with the porn and all that stuff. I watch tons and tons of porn. I used to have a porn addiction, okay? You got damn women who actually get addicted to stretching out their vagina, okay? But then you also have this wonderful thing that has come back into our society, is working out and exercising our bodies, our muscles. So they have learned to do Kegels and stuff to tighten their vagina back up. So you can literally stretch it out, but also maintain its tightness with your muscles. You have to consciously do this, okay? And I guess in doing so, they are able to enjoy a more vast, a wider range of experiences sexually. So, there's nothing wrong with that. I don't know. If that's what you want, you're willing to go through the suffering to enjoy the pleasures, fine, accept it. As long as you're willing to accept it, there's nothing wrong with that. That's no different than somebody wanting to have nice things, you know, and build big, nice houses. You have to be willing to work, do the hard work, and make the money, okay, to be able to afford the quality goods and stuff, okay? Because quality stuff is not cheap. So you have to be willing to stretch yourself outside your maybe your normal limits and stuff. That's building your career and expanding your career and stuff. That is no different. No difference there. Okay, and I guess I like comparing those two things because a lot of people in our country will look at sex as being perverted. It's not any more perverted. The only thing that makes it perverted is your idea of it, the way you perceive it, or the way that you use it. So if you want the pleasure from it, but you don't understand the consequences that come with it, you're not willing to accept the pain and suffering, that's what makes it perverted. Because when you try to avoid your the suffering from your own pleasures, you throw your suffering onto somebody else and you hurt other people. You can't, if you want the pleasure, you have to accept the suffering too. And that's what people need to understand these days. We need to stop throwing all our suffering on other people for the choices and the pleasures that we enjoy. That's what tyrants do. Tyrannical rulers of the world and stuff, you know, they create slaves, and so the slaves do all the hard work while they enjoy all the fucking pleasure, you know. That don't work. That ain't good. I run into this with my ex. I don't know. Maybe I was doing it to her too. I don't know. I felt like I was being used for pleasure, but she wasn't doing any of the work. I was doing all the work, and she was enjoying all the pleasure. Literally, in the bedroom, and out of the bedroom. She did not want to contribute and suffer as much as I was suffering. I done all the suffering for both of us. And it used to be, I don't know, I say that. Maybe she suffered in her own way, in a different way. I don't know. If she was here, we could talk about it, but, we never could talk about anything. She never learned to communicate. And that's not her fault. That's where she's coming from in life. None of it's her fault or my fault. We were ignorant. I don't know. I think we both done the best we could. I think everybody pretty well does the best they can. Sometimes your best isn't good enough, though. Your best, sometimes you still fail. And we're failing each other these days because, like I said, we keep throwing our suffering all around on each other. That's not good. You need to heal and become wholesome and accept your own suffering in life. That is what this Buddhism talks about when it says the practice of Dharma. Dharma is a teaching, but it's also a life practice. It is the way that you live your life. Karma is the consequences that come back on you. If they're not coming back on you, they're coming back on somebody else. And let me tell you what, that's an illusion. If your consequences come back on somebody else and it hurts them, that is eventually is going to come back on you and hurt you. Okay? So that is what the Bible talks about. Where hell comes from and everything. You can't hurt other people and do bad things to other people and avoid the consequences from it. Those consequences are going to come back and get you. Okay? Now these days we've entered into a very feminine state of spirituality and a spiritual community. We have women who are very forgiving and they say, oh, it's okay, you can try again as many times as you want. God's not going to cast you into hell for eternity and blah, blah, blah. Okay. I don't believe you're going to be in hell for eternity, but I believe that if you continue to do bad things, you're going to stay in a place of hell until you learn to stop doing those bad things. So it's not okay to think that you have as many chances as you want. You're only prolonging your suffering if you say, oh, well, I'll get it right next time. I'll get it right next time. That's a poor attitude to have. You need to have the attitude of, I'm going to do my absolute best to get it right this time. And if I do my best and I don't get it right, that's okay. I'll face the suffering and I'll try again. I'll do better next time. That is a proper attitude to have if you want to grow and develop and get out of your suffering. If you want to stay in your suffering, well, then just you got as many chances as you want. Don't worry about it. You don't have to do your best. Just do what you feel like doing. See, there's a difference between doing what you feel like doing and doing your best. Doing your best means you actually are going to push yourself to your limit. Maybe past your limit. Okay? The only way to expand your limits is to go past them. So I think it's important to always be doing your absolute best and even going past your limits. Because that means that you're always growing. As long as you're always growing, you're not dying. You're living. You're alive. When you stop going past your limits, when you accept your limit, then that's where you're going to stop. You're not going to go any further. And if you're not going any further, then you're going to enter into the process of dissolution, death, decaying, Your limit is eventually it's going to begin to shrink on you a little bit at a time. So this happens with elderly people. I've been dealing with my grandpa lately, helping him, for a couple of years, been helping him out. Your joints tighten up, they get stiff and stuff, and you're not able to, as flexible, you're not able to do the things you used to do. Or for people, their minds begin to fade and decay away, and their memory and their knowledge and their mental abilities begin to shrink in on them. Okay? And they lose certain parts of it. It is in order to maintain, I believe that you can maintain pretty well until you die. You can maintain your body and your mind and you can maintain yourself, but that's what you have to do is maintain. Now, obviously, once you get to the end, there's going to be a death. I mean, I don't know. There's many different ways of dying. Some people have the long, slow death, and some people just go. I believe that we have more control of that than we realize. Okay? The way that you live your life, the way you do one thing is the way you're going to do everything. And that's why I said for Gene Beard, he passed away when it was time to do something, he just done it. He didn't hesitate. He didn't whine, bitch, moan, or complain. He would just do it. And he was extremely aware of things. He cleaned his teeth. He was 260 pounds, and he walked up a flight of stairs every single day in and out of his house. You know, he put wood in the stove and stuff at, how old was he? 89 years old. Okay. And when it was his time to go, he pretty much just went. He had a heart attack and went to the doctor and got that taken care of and was actually doing good with that. But then just a couple of weeks later, he had a brain aneurysm and he just went. Okay? And that's how he was. That's how he done things. Okay? So he learned to have a good life practice. And he did not suffer a great deal in his death. I would say he hardly suffered at all, if any. You know? So he learned to have good dharma. Okay? And because he had good dharma, he did not have karma. When you have good dharma, I guess I could say he didn't have karma. He had good karma as well, so good things come back to him. When you have good practices that go out of you, good things come back to you. Okay? And that's how you create good cycles for yourself. Okay? You got to learn to rid yourself of the bad, throwing bad things out of you, and you release good things, and those good things will come back to you. If you're releasing bad things, those bad things are going to come back to you, and you're going to constantly run into them again and again and again. So, and again, I want to say that me doing this, talking with y'all about all this, I listen to myself and everything I say because I'm also teaching myself. This helps me to become aware of stuff going on in my own life. I have bad things that come back to me. And sometimes I want to run away from them or avoid them. Sometimes I do because I don't know how to deal with them at the moment. So I put them off until later or deal with something else that I can do. Okay? But eventually I got to quit doing that and I got to face it. So I try to face everything that I can. Where was that? I need to get reading, man. We can't hardly go anywhere. I do too much talking and not enough reading. I don't know. What do y'all think about that? Why does Buddhism claim that experiences which apparently are pleasurable ultimately state suffering? We're way on past that. On an everyday level, for example, when you have good food, nice clothes, attractive jewelry, and so on, for a short time you feel really marvelous. Okay, so we was on past that too, so your clothes and stuff, but then it wears off and it changes. Okay, the pleasure changes suffering. That is the natural nature of things. They change. The same also applies to fame. At the beginning, you might think to yourself, "Oh, I'm so happy. Now I have a good name. I'm famous." But after some time, it could be that all you feel is frustration and dissatisfaction. The same sort of change can happen in friendships and in sexual relationships. At the beginning, you almost go mad with passion. But later, that very passion can turn to hatred and aggression, and in the worst cases, even lead to murder. So, obviously, I hadn't murdered. In a physical sense, I hadn't murdered nobody, but in a spiritual sense, I did murder Max. We went through all that. In the beginning, the high states of love and passion, and then it turned to feelings of being betrayed and just all, it changed to suffering, negative things. So you're going to go in a relationship, you will go through all of that. If you want the pleasure of a relationship, you better be prepared to accept the sufferings of it. So, the nature of a woman is to change. The nature of a man is to create stability. This is old school way of doing things. Now, the modern day, with developing an understanding of masculine energy and feminine energy, and how we both, men and women, have both of those in us, that is beginning to change. We are both have the ability to create change or to create stability. Women are developing the ability to create stability, while men are developing the ability to change themselves. Okay. If you look, wait a second. At the beginning, so that is the nature of things. If you look carefully, everything beautiful and good everything that we consider desirable brings us suffering in the end. Okay? I think that it only does that if you don't accept it. Once you learn the process, I don't know, maybe in a way that's how it is, but then in another way it's not. Just like I said, Christ, Revelation, it says all things are here for our pleasures. I think Christ had a short-term view on that matter. I think Buddhists are far more evolved spiritual people than Christ was. Christ was like a newborn baby who had not been around the block as many times as Buddhism. You know, Buddhism has been practicing their meditation and all that stuff for ages. Okay. Christ, I think, found the way of Buddhism, but then he had not experienced death yet. It was only after his physical death that he entered into spiritual life. But then once you have spiritual life, you also have spiritual death. That's real too. I've experienced that. So I'm quite certain Christ experienced it too. I think it took longer for him to experience that than it did us. But he did, certainly. That's why these days, the Bible lasted for 2,000 years. But now, in the last 100 years, you have had many, many scriptures and texts, spiritual books and stuff that have come back out, Christ's teachings and stuff. Stuff that wasn't put into the Bible, that we have discovered or realized that the church had hidden it from us or something. Evil had taken it and placed it away, or God took it and placed it away, because we were not evolved enough to be able to handle it. But now all this stuff is coming out. Like the book of Enoch. I think it was found hidden in a cave somewhere or something. Okay? There's like hundreds of books, spiritual scriptures and texts that we know of nowadays that were not in the Bible, that we have not known of for the last 2,000 years. So, life changes. My legs are starting to hurt. I need to get to a stopping point. Finally, we come to the third type of suffering, the suffering of conditioning. This addresses the main question. Why is this the nature of things? The answer is because everything that happens in samsara is due to ignorance. Under the influence of control of ignorance, there is no possibility of a permanent state of happiness. Some kind of trouble, some kind of problem always arises. The answer is because everything that happens in samsara is due to ignorance. So when I had my awakening, my enlightenment, I used the word ignorant all the time. I said we are an ignorant people. I called people, I would state that people were ignorant. We were very ignorant. I said to remove ignorant from yourself. Educate and discipline yourselves. Okay? Ignorance leads to pain and suffering. It's lack of consciousness, lack of awareness, knowledge. Under the influence of control of ignorance, there is no possibility of a permanent state of happiness. So under the influence of control of ignorance. So thinking that you can control ignorance, ignorant people. That's why I don't have any use for physical laws too much. The government laws and safety rules and codes and shit, OSHA and all that stuff in your workplaces. I don't have much use for that because they're trying to remove, they're trying to control ignorance in order to keep people from getting hurt. And it doesn't work. It never works. Okay? People still get hurt. People still die all the time from the dumbest mistakes. We're dying these days from things that are dumber than ever. And the reason for that being is because we have all these stupid safety rules that we tell people to follow. Because if you don't follow these rules, you're going to get hurt. Well, then when you have all these rules that tell you what to be aware of, then suddenly you stop being aware of other things. You actually lose your awareness. Okay? When you start focusing on what they tell you to focus on, then you lose awareness to other things. And then the other things that you're unaware of is what fucking kills you and hurts you. So when we focus our attention on the big problems, we lose sight of the little minor problems. And then all these hundreds and thousands and just an infinite amount of tiny problems develop within us. Okay? And then all those little problems kill us. Literally kill people. The tiniest of fucking things in a workplace, especially dealing with equipment and machinery or something, or, you have goddamn all these ignorant ass forklift operators these days. You see the videos online all the time. A forklift is so simple. But you put a fucking idiot, and there's tons of idiots in them these days. You put an idiot in it, and they just, goddamn, they kill themselves or kill somebody, or they can really fuck major shit up. So the rules, the man-made laws and rules aren't helping us. That's just an illusion that we think they are. They don't, though. It is the natural rules and laws that educate us the best. And the natural rules and laws are that if you do something stupid, you're going to get hurt. Or you might kill somebody. And then when you kill somebody, then you have to experience the spiritual suffering of it, of your ignorance. Okay? That brings awareness to people. That's why it's important for us to, I'm not going to say not to care about killing somebody or hurting somebody. You're supposed to care about life deeply. But if a mistake happens and somebody dies, you should not go placing blame all over the place for that. Even with rapes and murders and all that stuff, you should not go placing blame for those things. You should look for understanding. Because if you want to fix the problem, the root of the problem, you have to find understanding in it and have some love, mercy, and compassion to the situation. Also with a healthy balance of discipline. Okay, there has to be some discipline, and the person has to experience the consequences of their actions. So accountability, you have to hold accountability on them. So the answer is because everything that happens in samsara is due to ignorance. Under the influence or control of ignorance, there is no possibility of permanent state of happiness. Some kind of trouble, some kind of problem always arises. So I was happy when I was with God, and the reason I lost that happiness, I gave in to temptation of a woman. I guess I'd done it the wrong way is really all that happened. I don't know. It's the little things I'm confused about in there. God was telling me not to go see her, but I did anyways. So I say God, my higher self. She was my weakness. Some kind of trouble, some kind of problem always arises. So long as we remain under the power of ignorance, that is, our fundamental misapprehension or confusion about the nature of things. Then sufferings come one after another, like ripples on water. The third level of suffering, therefore, refers to the bare fact of our unenlightened existence, which is under the influence of this fundamental confusion and of the negative karmas to which confusion gives rise. The reason it is called the suffering of conditioning is because this state of existence serves as the basis, not only for painful experiences in this life, but also for the causes and conditions of suffering in the future. Therefore refers to the bare fact of our unenlightened existence, which is under the influence of this fundamental confusion of the negative karmas to which confusion gives rise. So confusion creates negative karmas. You get confused, you make mistakes, and you have problems that arise from it. And the reason it is called the suffering of conditioning is because this state of existence serves as the basis not only for painful experiences in this life, but also for the causes and conditions of suffering in the future. So it's kind of like old people, they tell you to lift with your legs, not your back, because they learn the hard way. Them old timers, a lot of them, they used to lift with their backs, and then they get old and their backs hurt and they experience suffering from it because of the conditioning that they put into their back over the span of a lifetime. Okay? So they learn from their suffering, and they're trying to teach it to the youth how not to do those things and enter into that same suffering. How the youth, if they listen to the elderly, they can avoid the suffering of the elderly. But guess what's going to happen? The youth is going to, in their ignorance, they're going to discover new sufferings. Because they're going to do things differently. And when you do things differently, there's going to be problems arise from it. Like I said, if you're going to live, you may as well expect problems at some point or another. I don't care who you are. Even Buddhism, even the Buddhist community and these religious communities, they will at some point dissolve and fall apart. Given enough time, I guarantee it. They will change. They will go through changes. Okay, so changes means that they lose their way of living, their way of life changes, and it becomes something entirely different. It will die off and be reborn into something different. Dharmakirti's commentary on the Compendium of Valid Cognition and Aryadeva's 400 verses on the middle way both offer a useful way of looking at this third level of suffering and help deepen our understanding of it. Both works lay the emphasis on reflecting upon the subtle level of the transient, impermanent nature of reality. So the middle way, it says the 400 verses of the middle way. That's also the way that Christ talks about. That is the balance. You find balance and you live in that balance, okay? Christ says the way is straight and narrow, okay? So you got to hit the middle. You got to center it, okay? It is important to bear in mind that there are two levels of meaning here. One can understand impermanence in terms of how something arises, stays for a while, and then disappears. Okay? This level of impermanence can be understood quite easily. We should add that on this level, the dissolution of something requires a secondary condition which acts as a catalyst to destroy its continuity. So the dissolution of something requires a secondary condition which acts as a catalyst to destroy its continuity. So dissolution is breaking apart. That is, in order for that to happen, that requires a secondary condition which acts as a catalyst. So Christ was a catalyst. Christ come in and broke apart the old ways of God and created completely new ways in that religion, in that lineage of people. He completely changed and reestablished the spiritual laws and the way of living. Okay, he was that catalyst that created the dissolution of the Jews and created Christianity. Me, I've done the same thing. I am the same way. I've compared myself to Christ, to mushrooms, to many things, because I'm a catalyst for people. This is actually one of my abilities in life or purposes. I help people transition into the next stage of life. I have the ability to do this because I understand the process of everything. I create chaos in people's lives, for one. Okay, I've noticed this. I do. I come in and I tear apart their belief systems. I've sat with many people in their own homes and talked about politics and spiritual, ethical belief systems and stuff. And I've pointed out flaws and stuff with them, while also they point stuff out with me. So it's a working of myself to improve and better myself, but also to improve and better them. If you want to improve and make something better, you have to change it. Okay? If you have old ways that, or you recognize problems with them and bad things about them, you have to change your ways. Y'all notice me slumping over here? My damn, oh, that right there is got pain and suffering, and it's kind of numb, as well as my other ankle. My knees aren't too bad. See, that knee is actually almost on the ground now. Almost, not quite. If I sit up, got just a little further to go. It used to be really stiff. It used to hold itself up higher, but it's getting, over time, the more I work it, the closer it gets to the ground. So, that's me going through pain and suffering in order to develop my flexibility that's here. I got to flex myself, okay, so that I have a wider range of experiences. I don't have to, I can meditate comfortably and rid myself of the suffering. Meditation, the reason I do that is because meditation is good for your mind. It's actually good for your heart. It's good for your health overall in general, okay? So in order to improve my health, to improve my mind, to improve all this stuff, I have to put my body through physical suffering. That's the first thing. And once you get your body settled good, that really allows you to focus more on your heart and your head, what's going on in your head and your desires and stuff. Also, once I get my foundation set, I'll at times I have pains in my back from meditating. So that once I get a solid foundation, that will eventually work up, and I'll develop a stronger and more solid core, and so on. So it's all connected and all works together. And, so even the Buddhists, if they think that you can eliminate suffering altogether, I don't think you can do that. I don't think that's even possible at all. And the only way to do that would be to create no more life. No more life could develop and form. Or to accept, through acceptance of death. So I guess you could eliminate suffering through acceptance of death. I could say that this isn't really suffering, this is pain. But the ultimate truth of what I'm doing here is happiness and pleasure. So I think that's part of this process, what we're doing. We do it again and again and again, and we get better and better and better at it, so we can move through the pain and suffering so quickly we hardly even realize it. When we recognize a problem, we instantly have the ability to fix it. And and it doesn't take, you don't have to go through that long, drawn-out process of suffering. I don't know. Depends on how you want to look at it there. Like I said, I connected to God and happiness once before, but then I fell away from it, fell deep into suffering. So I don't know if this process ever ends. Maybe Buddhism has not been alive long enough to experience the great death. Which would be, for Buddhism, would be the great death of Buddhism. I don't know. But then again, maybe it will never die. Maybe it won't die until the end of time when all things die. Maybe the spirit of Buddhism the religion itself will carry on forever in some way or another. I'm sure of that. It will in some way or another. So you have to connect your consciousness, your awareness, to that everlasting energy that carries on forever. I guess that's how you would live forever. But then you still come to the issue that forever existence is going to die off. At some point, everything has a death. And then it has another rebirth. That's it. That's a conundrum right there. That is a conundrum. And I guess I haven't got it worked out. And I don't think anybody's got it worked out. I don't know that it can be worked out. It's a mystery. It's a mystery. I guess maybe to beat it, you conquer the mystery. It says in Revelations, the final battle against evil is against the mother of Babylon. Mystery, the mother of Babylon, or something like that. Okay. So you got to conquer mystery by accepting it. I think there's always mysteries. You just have to accept it. Oh, my legs are hurting. I'm going to pull these down. Yeah, alrighty. Oh boy. I'm trying to see. Man, we still got. I guess I'm just going to have to stop at the end of a paragraph here. I was wanting to get to the next section. We ain't made it there. We ain't going to make it there. I'm about to stop because I don't know. We're an hour and 5 minutes. Let's see. Alrighty. We'll work all that out. Both works lay the. Okay, so both offer a useful way of looking at this third level of suffering and help deepen our understanding of it. Both works lay the emphasis on reflecting upon the subtle level of the transient, impermanent nature of reality. Both works lay the emphasis on reflecting upon the subtle level of the transient, impermanent nature of reality. What was the first work? So you have the Dharmakirti's commentary on the Compendium of Valid Cognition. I don't know what that is. That's something somebody, other scriptures or a commentary, I guess it's somebody done about the Compendium of Valid Cognition. Compendium. I don't know what that is. What that means. Let me get stretched out here. I think we'll get stretched out, and I'm going to move on into, keep going here. Why? Because like I said in the last video, y'all can pause or stop this at any time and come back to it later. I'm going to push myself through. Let's push on past some limits here. Oh boy, I just sat for an hour like that. I'm pretty stiff. I'll get that worked out of me. Oh, I stick my feet in y'all's face and pay no attention to that. I think I'm going to move my ass. We're going to move up to the recliner. Oh. Yep. Alright. Oh, we moved to a new place here. Get resituated. Oh. So, like when I connected to God, I fucking sat down and meditated for 2 hours. I haven't been able to do it since. Like 2 hours and got up just fine. So, now an hour, that's really good for me, an hour. Hell, I used to get that stiff within 30 minutes, Yeah, boy. Alright, I wanted to look up compendium. I don't know what that means. I like to understand what I'm reading. It's good to understand what you're reading. M comes after L, not before. Compendium. Compendium. A brief, comprehensive summary and abridgment. Okay, so a brief, comprehensive summary. Oh shit, that's commentary. Okay, so give us a commentary on the Compendium of Valid Cognition. I want to look up the definition of cognition too. And so your cognitive functions and stuff, but I don't have a good solid understanding of that. the act or faculty of knowing or perceiving. Okay, a thing known, so knowing something. So a commentary on the compendium of valid cognition. So a commentary on the short summary of valid knowing. So that was one of the references, and then the other one was Ariadeva's 400 verses on the middle way. I don't know if I want to begin to pronounce that, because it's actually called something else in another language, and it's a word that has like 20 letters in it. I'm not even going to try it. It says, both offer a useful way of looking at this third level of suffering and help deepen our understanding of it. Both works lay the emphasis on reflecting upon the subtle level of the transient, impermanent nature of reality. Transient, that's like mobile, right? Like you transport or something. Man, I'm terrible. We're going to have to look up a bunch of words here. Transient. If I had good service, I'd type this in my phone and you know, I'd probably do it faster that way, but my service is shit. My Wi-Fi sucks too. The sun's coming out. That's good. I thought it was supposed to rain all day, man. Oh, man. Transient, passing away quickly, of short duration, not permanent, temporary. Okay, so both works lay the emphasis on reflecting upon the subtle level of transient, impermanent nature of reality. So, okay, that's okay. That means impermanent nature of reality. So reality is constantly dying and changing. Every moment, what is a moment? You can say a second, but a second's not a moment. You could say a millisecond, but then you can always get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. So we talk about these days being present, being in the here and now. Okay, that means so being in the flow of life and everything. So that's kind of what that means to me, is the subtle level of the transient nature of reality. It is very, very subtly dying off and being reborn constantly. It's like it never stops. It's always happening. And to connect to God is to get into that happening, that energy, constant flow. Okay, you really, and you could call it birth and it's not really birth and death. See, then once you get into it, it becomes flow. So instead of, I guess, a repetitive cycle, it becomes a flowing, everlasting cycle. It is important to bear in mind that there are two levels of meaning here. One can understand impermanence in terms of how something arises, stays for a while, and then disappears. This level of impermanence can be understood quite easily. We should add that on this level, the dissolution of something requires a secondary condition,
which acts as a catalyst to destroy its continuity. However, there is also a second, more subtle understanding of transience. From this more subtle perspective, the obvious process of change we have just described. The obvious process of change we have just described is merely the effect of a deeper underlying and dynamic process of change. At a deeper level, everything is changing from moment to moment. It's just like I said, constantly. This process of momentary change is not due to a secondary condition that arises to destroy something, but rather the very cause that led a thing to arise is also the cause of its destruction. So this process of momentary change is not due to a secondary condition. A secondary condition that arises to destroy something, but rather the very cause that led a thing to arise is also the cause of its destruction. So you can say Christ arose to save the world. The cause of his actions and everything he done was to save the world. Then look what happened. The world crucified him, killed him, destroyed him. Okay? God led people out of the land of Egypt, away from the Pharaohs, to save them. You could say God arose because the people were in the land of Egypt under the power of the Pharaohs and stuff, and they were just in this immense amount of suffering, and so they prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed, and eventually they conjured up a God. And at least that's how I perceive that story and understand it. It seems to me that they conjured up a God. They cried out so loudly and so much that eventually a God come to save them. And he did. He led them out of the land of Egypt and through the wilderness and everything. But then the very God that come to save them also destroyed many of them. God wiped many of them out. And he said it was a purification process. But then as time goes on, guess what happens? Then the people, they turn away from God. And they kind of destroy God in a lot of ways. The things that God tried to teach them and instill into them, and how to what He done to save them, they destroyed His ways and turned to their own ways. And it's like this battle between God and humanity throughout time, where humanity destroys God and we enter into a very worldly side of life. But then eventually we destroy ourselves when God comes back and saves us, but then it's like God becomes overly controlling. We're not free if we're under God's rules and laws. So we enter too far into God, and then we become displeased and fight back and rebel, and it's this back and forth. And what needs to happen, and I think is happening these days, I think Christ kind of come to start that, is to end that back and forth cycle and to create a continuous flow of things. So me, in my own spiritual journey, I've talked about duality. When you're stuck in duality, you're swinging back and forth like a pendulum, okay? In order to end that duality, you have to create a third point or something, there has to be something else to end that back and forth sway and to create a constant flow, a circle or something, or if you just put a third point in there, then you can create a base, you can create a triangle. You're not just bouncing back and forth. Now you have a solid, what would that be called? A shape or something, a figure, a base. You have a way to create a flow, okay, instead of back and forth. You'll never have balance in your life if you only have 2 points of balance. We all need 3 points of balance. We have 2 feet, but then we have an equilibrium in here, okay? So, as far as for physical balance and stuff. Not going to get into that one. So, get into the flow of life as human beings. If we get into that flow, we will stop experiencing death. The back and forth. Pain, suffering, joy, suffering, joy, suffering. And you'll be able to get into the flow of peace and true happiness and just living. Just be alive and living. Okay? Momentariness should thus be understood in two ways. First, in terms of the three moments of existence of any entity. First, in the terms of the three moments of existence of any entity. Okay? So in the first instant, it arises. In the second instant, it stays. In the third instant, it dissolves. Second, in terms of each instant itself. An instant is not static. As soon as it arises, it moves toward its own cessation. I looked that up for what's cessation. Cessation is the end of suffering. Okay. So you could say Christ, as soon as he arose, he was already on the way to cessation, the end of his suffering. But first he had to go through his suffering, like I talked about before in the videos. He said while he was talking with his people and stuff, he says, God, how long must I suffer here with these people? So he was in his suffering in this earth, in this world, with people, with humanity. But then upon his death, he was released from his suffering and back into spiritual, back into God. Okay. Maybe there's not spiritual suffering. Maybe there's only worldly, physical suffering. I don't know. I can't say I have a physical body and a physical being, so I experienced what I call spiritual death. But God is everlasting, so God's like a continual flow that never dies. That's what I need to get into. Break away from this back and forth, life and death stuff, and get into that continual flow, which is what I was connected to when I was connected to God. And I took a bite from a tree of knowledge. And so I had a nice perfect circle or a nice perfect flow going. And then I took a bite from a tree of knowledge and I broke that flow. And when I broke it, I went plumb into chaos and spirals and crazy shit. So now I need to create another constant flow that's not broken. Enter back into knowing myself and my life and everything about me, around me and about me. Since everything arises complete from the outset, the birth of things comes together with the seed or potential for their dissolution. So the birth of things comes together with the seed or potential for their dissolution. In this respect, one could say that their cessation does not depend on any secondary further condition. Therefore, in Buddhism, all phenomena are said to be other-powered. That is, they are under the control of their causes. Once you have developed this understanding of the transient nature of phenomena, you are able to situate the understanding that you have of dukkha within that context and reflect upon your life as an individual in the samsaric world. So once you have developed this understanding of the transient nature of phenomena, you are able to situate the understanding you have of dukkha within that context, and reflect upon your life as an individual in the samsaric world. So maybe that's what I'm doing now, is reflecting upon my life as an individual in the samsaric world, so the world of suffering. I forget what dukkha is. Y'all remember what dukkha is? Yeah, doo-doo. Now the question is, what is dukkha? What is suffering? Buddhism describes three levels or types of suffering. Okay, so I guess dukkha is the suffering. Okay, the three levels of suffering. Yeah, it makes sense. Good, I like that. See, see, that's how God works. You have to learn to trust your feelings, connect your feelings and your mind and everything, and learn to trust yourself. You got to build trust with yourself. I said in the beginning, I said dukkha. This sounds like taking a shit or something. Doo doo. I don't know. Just remind me of shit. So, and sure, why not? It's suffering. So suffering is shitty. I don't know. I like that. Y'all like my humor? If you don't, piss on you. I like my humor. So, once you have developed this understanding of transient nature of phenomena is something you cannot understand. You are able to situate the understanding you have of dukkha within that context and reflect upon your life and as an individual in the samsaric world. So in your own life of suffering, you know that since the world has come into being as a result of its own causes and conditions, it too must be other-powered. So this is why the Bible refers to the world as evil, okay? This is why I could call women, my ex, evil, because she come into my life, she just come into my life, and then I fell in love. I didn't have control of that. It just happened. So that was other-powered. Something outside of myself powered that and caused it to happen. So this is what the Bible says when it talks about God says his people, they turn to false gods. Those false gods are other powers outside of them that cause them to take a bite from a tree of knowledge, to give in to temptation and sin. And when you sin, that is what sends you into that chaotic spiral. You break out of, so if you have a perfect circle, you can have a continuous flow that never breaks. But when you take a bite from a tree of knowledge, you break out of that perfect circle. And many religions, they say that the spiritual path, is a spiral. It is one that twists and turns and goes all over. Some of it goes all over the place. Okay? But in order to end your suffering, you have to stop that going all over the place. You have to stop giving in to temptation and everything, and you have to create another circle or a complete. It doesn't have to be a circle. It has to be a complete pattern. It cannot have a break in it anywhere. It cannot have an end somewhere. If it has an end, then that means it has a death. That means there's going to be suffering with it. So it needs to have a complete flow. Imagine electricity. Electricity needs to have a complete circuit in order for it to flow. And if it has a complete circuit, it can flow continuously. But when you place an end to that circuit, so a light bulb is the end of the circuit. And what happens there is the electricity comes out in the form of light, but it burns up. It goes through a state of dissolution and transforms into light, which, so it goes through stages of changing, a period of change and dissolution. It breaks apart and becomes something different. Okay, and then that also dies off eventually. So if you want to quit your death, quit dying, you have to, you can't let go of your light or something. You have to have a continuous circuit, a revolving circuit, and you can do that. When you do that, you're going to build a wall on yourself. You're going to stop learning new things. For communities and stuff, you can see this in very small communities or small cultures around the world. They don't let outside ways and belief systems into their culture, because if they was to do that, that would tear it apart. And so they have a closed belief system, closed culture there They know who they are. Well, I don't want to say closed. They know who they are. They believe in their way of doing things, and they don't change. Okay, and that allows them to create an environment, a very loving, good quality environment for themselves, just like the Amish community. Just like in any of the Bible, it says you build a 12 foundation building. Christ is the light of the building. No evil shall come into it. The doors are always open. You're free to come and go as you please, but no evil shall come into that building. So no outside ways will come in and change that building, the way of life within that building. Okay, I myself am working on doing this with myself in my own life and everything. I'd done that before, and the reason it fell apart is because I had a woman and she didn't stay with me. The building that I had built was not good enough. At least it wasn't good enough for me to keep a woman. And that's something that I want in life. So I had to be torn apart and have to rebuild on in a new way because my old way wasn't good enough. So now I got to find a new way and reestablish that good circuit there, you know. And it's a bitch, but it is what it is. So, all right. You know that since the world has come into being as a result of its own causes and conditions, it too must be other powered. In other words, it must be under the control of the causal processes that led to its arising. However, in the context of samsara, the causes that we are referring to here are nothing other than our fundamental confusion or ignorance. And the delusory states, the delusory states to which confusion gives rise. We know that so long as we are under the domination of this fundamental confusion, there is no room for lasting joy or happiness. Of course, within the three realms, there are states which are comparatively more joyful than others. However, so long as we remain within samsara, whether in the form realm, the formless realm, or the desire realm, there is no scope for joy to be lasting. So joy is going to die off as long as you live in what they call samsara. And worldly, the Bible calls worldly, you get sucked into worldly desires and stuff, which would be sin and evil ways. Hell, it's hell. Okay. So, in the final analysis, we are in a state of dukkha. Dukkha, suffering, state of suffering. This is the meaning of the third type of suffering. Okay, so hang on. So I may have been wrong there. In the final analysis, we are in the state of dukkha. This is the meaning of the third type of suffering. In the final state of analysis, we are in the state of dukkha. This is the meaning of the third type of suffering. The state of dukkha, so the state of dukkha would be the final analysis of suffering. So maybe that's learning to I don't know. Third type of suffering is a suffering of conditioning. This addresses the main question: why is this the nature of things? The answer is because everything that happens in samsara is due to ignorance. I agree. How the hell did I get out of that before? I got out of my ignorance once, and I entered into a state of knowing, and I was a completely wholesome man. And nobody fucking really told me anything. I learned, like I took what people said and applied it to what I already knew, if it made sense, if it correlated with what I knew and who I was in my life, my knowing, okay? But I did not let anybody tell me that I didn't know what I knew. You know, there's a lot of people that'll do that. You tell them you know something, something happened to you or something, you know something, and they'll look at you and they'll tell you you're full of shit, okay? They'll push you over. They'll try to beat you down and knock you down, knock your own beliefs. What you know, they'll try to knock it out of the way and tell you that you don't know what you know. The reason people do that is because for one, they're confused and ignorant, but they will try to control you with it. So that's evil trying to control you. Okay. And I rid myself of that once. It fucking pisses me off that I goddamn lost it. A lot of stuff pisses me off though. Because why did I lose it? Why did I give in to temptation? Why did I take a bite from it? Why did I fucking go do that? And destroy myself like that. That's all I did. I fucking destroyed the fuck out of myself. And that's why I say I don't know. I don't ever intend on letting a fucking woman distract me again. I gotta have control of myself. Self-control. Quit letting anything tempt me. I cannot have any fucking temptation. I need to get my fucking mindset, figure out who the fuck I am, and do what I want to fucking do without anybody goddamn pulling me aside or pulling me off track. You know. I don't know. I'm probably pissed off and aggravated now because I don't completely understand this shit because I got goddamn ignorance inside of me. I don't like that. Of course I don't like it. It's suffering. Ignorance is suffering. And that's the next, we're at the end there. The next fucking, I don't know what you call those. It's not a chapter. It's a goddamn section. The next section is ignorance, titled ignorance. So, I don't know. Maybe this damn book will fucking teach me how to get rid of it. Bring me back into God or something. So, alright. Anyways, the sun is shining. So, I think I'm going to go get my ass up. I'm fucking lazy. So I got aggravated. Got like depression inside of me. When I say depression, I don't mean like want to kill myself depression. I mean like depression is in shit inside of me that's holding my energy levels down, keeping me from doing what the fuck I ought to be doing. Getting into the flow of life, my own flow, harmonizing my body together and everything. I don't know. I was going to say I'm going to go out here and dig in my driveway, but it's been raining for a day and a half, so it's probably fucking muddy as fuck. Now see, I hit a fucking period here. I don't know. I don't know what the fuck to do, and it pisses me off. Suffering. Goddamn bullshit. So anyways, I love y'all. Bye. I don't know. Hope you enjoyed it. Don't let my suffering cause you to suffer. Okay? You just laugh at my suffering. That's all you do. Okay? You don't have to suffer with me. It doesn't do anybody any good. I love you. Bye.